Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This video uses AI narration to present our original book analysis. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into Percival Everett's
Sounds good.
The Confessions of James. This fictional autobiography, takes us through pre-Civil War America alongside a man born into slavery who ultimately finds freedom. And you find it's not just a story about slavery, but a story about one man's search for identity and freedom.
You got it.
And along the way, you encounter surprising philosophical discussions and a look at America's brutal past.
It's really something. It's incredible how Everett uses the fictional autobiography format to create this direct, intimate connection with James's experiences.
Yeah, one of the things that struck me was how James is acutely aware of the power of language.
Right.
He understands how it's used to control and dehumanize slaves. He even holds secret lessons for slave children, teaching them how to navigate the complexities of communication with their masters.
Yeah, it's fascinating. He shows us this linguistic tightrope that enslaved people had to walk. Like in that scene where the children are translating, how they would tell a white woman about a fire without threatening her sense of superiority.
Yeah.
It highlights the mental gymnastics and calculated speech required just to survive.
Really makes you think about the subtle ways resistance can manifest.
Yeah.
And speaking of resistance, James is constantly grappling with this idea of freedom. He escapes, he's recaptured, and each time it forces him to confront what freedom truly means for a black man in a society built on this racial hierarchy.
And it's not just about physical freedom either. Even when James is technically owned by a man who claims to be against slavery, he's still treated as property.
Yeah.
What does this tell us about the systemic nature of the problem?
Well, it shows that it's ingrained in the very fabric of society, not just about individual good or bad intentions. And then we have these surreal encounters. James meets Voltaire, John Locke, even a fictional character from Voltaire's Candide. A little jarring, honestly.
Oh, yeah, totally. But that's the genius of Everett. By juxtaposing Enlightenment ideals with the brutal reality of slavery, he forces us to confront the hypocrisy at the heart of these supposedly enlightened thinkers.
Right. So these encounters aren't just random. They're deeply intertwined with James's evolving understanding of freedom, especially as he's learning to read and write and engage with complex philosophical ideas.
Absolutely. They push him to question the very justifications used to support slavery. He's not just breaking free physically, but also intellectually.
Right. And it's not a straightforward, idealized journey either.
Right.
James makes some morally ambiguous choices, stealing, even contemplating abandoning Huck for his own survival.
This really challenges the reader. We're forced to see the impossible situations enslaved people faced. And James, in his complexity, doesn't always make the right choices. But that's what makes him so real, so human.
His relationships are complex, too. That bond with Huck Finn, a young white boy who helps him escape, stands out. Then there's Norman Brown, a white man pretending to be black, who joins James on his journey.
These relationships defy easy categorization, that challenge preconceived notions about race, identity, and highlight the shifting power dynamics within these unlikely bonds.
And through it all, James is driven by the search for his wife and daughter. He was separated from them. And that longing for family adds this incredibly powerful emotional layer to his pursuit of freedom.
Yeah, it shows us that freedom isn't just an abstract concept for James. It's deeply personal. It's about being reunited with the people he loves most in the world.
Which brings me to what I found to be a central theme in the Confessions of James, the transformative power of writing. We see how his literacy grows throughout the story, starting with those secret lessons.
Right, and it culminates in the very act of writing his story, hence the title, The Confessions of James.
Right, and for me, it begs the question, what does this confession represent? Is it an act of reclaiming his narrative, a way to process his experiences? What do you think?
I think it's all of those things. It's an assertion of selfhood in a world that sought to deny him that very thing. And for us, the readers, it's a reminder that history is often written by the victors.
Right. Giving James a voice lets us hear a different side of the story, a side that's often silenced. It's truly incredible what Everett accomplishes in this book.
He weaves humor and heartbreak, philosophical insights and gritty realism, and he does it all within this really unique narrative structure.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It's a book that stays with you long after you finish it.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about the legacy of slavery and how it continues to shape American society today.
It's amazing how Everett captures both the absurdity and the cruelty of the system. There are moments of humor, but there's always this underlying sadness and outrage. Like that scene with the minstrel show, it's hard to even process. Here's James, a black man trying to escape slavery, forced to perform in blackface.
That scene is such a powerful commentary on how deeply ingrained racism was in American culture at the time. Blackface minstrelsy was incredibly popular, and it relied on those racist stereotypes and caricatures to entertain white audiences.
Yeah.
What do you think Everett is trying to say by putting James in that situation?
I think he's forcing us to confront the ugliness of that history and how it dehumanized black people. And it's not just a historical commentary. It's like James internalizes some of that racism. He's exposed to so much prejudice that it begins to distort his own sense of self.
It's a sad reality of oppression. It can make you question your own worth, your own humanity, which makes his quest for freedom even more powerful.
Speaking of powerful, that escape from the riverboat with Norman Brown is wild.
Yeah.
I felt like something out of an action movie.
It's such a suspenseful scene, but it also reveals so much about James and Norman's relationship. On the surface, you have this white man risking his life for James, but beneath that, he's wrestling with his own internalized racism. It's messy, just like real life.
And that twist, when Norman reveals he's not actually black, it makes you question everything. What does it even mean to be black or white in a society obsessed with racial categories?
Exactly. The book doesn't offer easy answers. It raises tough questions about identity and how societal pressures shape our understanding of ourselves. But then again, it wouldn't be a deep dive. If it did, would it?
The story takes a dark turn when James returns to Hannibal and discovers his family has been sold. That confrontation with Judge Thatcher is one of the most intense scenes in the book. James is done playing by the rules.
It's a turning point for James, but also for the reader. It's where we see the limitations of peaceful resistance in the face of such brutal oppression. And in that moment, he's ready to fight for his freedom by any means necessary.
Even if it means violence, as we see in that scene where he kills the overseer. It's brutal, but I understood his rage.
It's a stark reminder that violence was often the only language oppressors understood. It's not about condoning his actions, but understanding the desperation and dehumanization that could drive a person to such extremes.
And then through all of this, the final chapters bring a mix of heartbreak and hope. James finds his family, but their future is uncertain.
It's a bittersweet ending, but it speaks to the resilience of the human spirit. Even after everything, James never gives up hope.
That final image of James, his family, and the others running north toward freedom is so powerful. It leaves you feeling like anything is possible.
It's an ending that stays with you. It makes you think about the complexities of freedom and the ongoing struggle for racial justice in America.
This has been a truly mind-blowing deep dive, and I can't recommend this book enough to our listeners.
It's a must-read for anyone who wants to grapple with the history of slavery in America and the ways it continues to impact our society.
Yeah, it really is a book that demands to be discussed and dissected. It's not a passive read. It's an active engagement with history, philosophy, and the human condition.
And for a book dealing with such heavy themes, it's surprisingly funny at times. But that humor never feels out of place, does it? It's always pointed, always serving a purpose.
It's like he uses humor to highlight the absurdity of the situation, to make those moments of cruelty and injustice even more stark.
Exactly. It's a way to cope with the trauma, to find glimmers of light in the darkest of times.
Thinking back on the book, one thing that really stuck with me is how Everett plays with time. He jumps back and forth, weaving together different threads of James's life.
That nonlinear structure is so effective. It mirrors the fragmented nature of memory, especially for someone who has endured such trauma. It also underscores the cyclical nature of oppression.
Right. It's like the past is always present, always shaping James's understanding of the world. And it forces us as readers to piece together his story, to actively engage with the narrative.
And through that process, we come to understand James not just as a victim, but as a complex human being full of contradictions and desires.
He's a survivor, a philosopher, a father, a man constantly pushing against the boundaries imposed upon him.
I think The Confessions of James is a book that will stay with me for a long time. It's a reminder that the fight for freedom is ongoing and that literature can be a powerful tool for challenging injustice and sparking meaningful conversations.
This deep dive has been truly eye-opening. If you want to explore the depths of The Confessions of James, we highly encourage you to read it yourself. You can find a link to purchase the book in the description below.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking book analyses. We'll see you in our next deep dive.